I think sometimes we don't realize how much of an asshole we actually are.
For a while, I journaled a lot. Like, hey, how do I think other people felt when they were around me today?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right, guys, welcome to the Hero Nation show, where business owners and entrepreneurs like yourself come to learn tools and tactics to live more epic lives. My name is John Rinehart, and I'm your host today, and I'm sitting right across from Alyssa Dyer. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Awesome. Today, we're actually going to be talking about a tool, which can be a tactic, which we're going to call systems, for someone who doesn't know anything about systems. All right? What is a system?
It solves problems. It's just a way to do something.
Okay.
That's it. It's
so
a way to do
business
something.
Specific, or is it?
We'll probably talk mostly about business, but no. A system is just the way you're going to do something over and over and over again. The same way.
Okay, so it's just the same way so it's just basically a process.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what do you think actually makes systems and processes so hard for business owners?
I think they overcomplicate it like 99.9% of the time. They hear system and think they need like a 19-point essay on how to get something done. And it's like,
I don't.
We just need 2 steps. And we all need to do the same 2 steps over and over again.
So what would you say the difference? So it's not like what you're talking about is basically like a general guideline rule book versus a detailed manual on how to do something.
I think both has their place.
Okay.
And it depends on what you're dealing with.
Okay, so
in sales, like our sales systems we've got like 6 points you've got to hit. Do it your own way. Do it with your own flair. Come up with your own. I mean, salespeople are kind of their own beast. And if they can't do it in a way that's authentic to them, it's going to fall flat. So with sales, marketing, it's kind of like a guidebook with contracts, legal work, things that really matter, like huge implications if you get it wrong. That's more of like step-by-step guidebook.
Okay. So but it's basically just a general process in order for you to move smoothly from one tactic point to the next.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your process for actually creating the systems?
It changes. Typically what happens is we'll have a problem come up. The first 1, 2, 3 times the problem comes up, I don't do anything with it. I just ignore it. Okay. Once it becomes a habit, that's when we step in and say, okay, we need a system or a process to either prevent this from happening or to make sure it happens, or whatever that fill in the blank is. So like on the sales side, if we have a salesperson who's awesome, has the charisma, has, everything that they're supposed to have, and they're just not converting, it's like, okay, we need to work something out here. And typically they're not hitting all the points.
So what I'm hearing is that, so when I normally hear system, right, from a lot of people, I actually hear things like they talk about almost like company-wide systems.
Yeah. And
you're actually breaking it a little bit farther back down into individual systems for individual players.
Yeah, when we did it, or when we do it in our company, it's more so like we'll start with one section of our business. So like I know a big part of your audience is real estate, so we could use that.
Okay.
So a lot of people will jump in and they try to have this like 22-point system for every single piece of their business, and they want all they want the listing and the buyers and the contract to close and the onboarding and all of that, everybody to be bought in and on page 1 because they went to a conference and got an idea. Like they heard McKinney from stage and decided we're going to do this exactly. No, you pick one. I mean, we spent probably 8 months just on contract to close, just making that freaking perfect. And now I don't really have to look at it, think about it, do anything with it, because the team knows every single piece of that part of our business is good and systemized. And then I can move on to the next thing.
I think when a lot of people hear I spent a year on contract to close, now they hear I spent a year perfecting contract to close, spending 40 hours a week for...
No, it means that I didn't let myself think about anything else. Listings, the listing agents did whatever they wanted to do.
So you literally hyper-focused down on...
Yeah, if they weren't converting, I had to worry about listings converting another day. I didn't pay attention to that problem until contract, because contract to close is where you start seeing balls dropped, complaints, legal issues. You forget about things after closing. Like in our mind, that was the biggest liability and the biggest opportunity to get customers for life. So that's what we paid attention to first. And if something was like level 10 crisis somewhere in the business, sure, but we weren't focused on writing blogs. We weren't focused on marketing. We didn't really care about the listing process. That kind of stuff just... It happened if it happened, and it didn't if it didn't. And
so did you write down this is the perfect process as we understand it today, and then everyone follow this process, and we find out where the hiccups are?
Yeah, it was that. And then we met every Monday and said, okay, we did it this way. Did it work or didn't it? And if it did work, we just kind of kept going. And if it didn't work, we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, what are we going to try?
Got it. So did you follow any basic systems, or did you just keep reinventing the wheel? Was it oh yeah, here are, the 10 different ways of doing it from these 10 different people. And I was like, okay, what are we going to pick and choose? Or was this no, we're building this system from the ground up?
My industry has a lot of stuff that you have to do kind of built in from the beginning. You have to inspect the property. You have to you don't have to, but there's generally speaking better practices.
Right.
And me and my partner had done it for so long. So we had kind of a framework to start from. Step one for me is once I have the framework, step one is always getting rid of everything that I can get rid of. Going through, if I make a list of 30 things that we're doing, how many of these can I mark off? That's narrowing it down. And then once we've got the 10 things and those are perfect, then we may add one or two in. Hey, I think our clients would like it if we did this personal touch. We're not going to worry about that till we have the basic framework done.
Okay. So was it hard? Because I'm guessing your partner is not like you in this type of systems. So how did you create value for the systems with the people around you? Because I'm sure you got some people pretty frustrated with you at some point.
It was tough. The toughest part was we're definitely a relationship-based business. Mm-hmm. For a long time, that meant we would do all these extra little things that I don't even know whose idea it was, where it came from. We had 4 intro emails that went out. One for utilities, one for changing their address, one for transaction info. And I don't know whose idea it was, but somebody at one point thought that it was the best thing that the client got 4 emails from us. So it was looking at that and being we're going to get rid of 70% of that crap and just have one email. That's it. And when we're perfect at doing that one email, awesome. And so we had some people that were hey, we should be doing this, or we should be doing this, or we've always done it this way, or, well, why are we getting rid of that? We've always done that. That part was tough just because it's hard to get people to see why it looks like you're taking a step backwards to go from 40 steps to just 10 that we do perfect. Right.
But it's nailing one step at a time.
Yeah. And then you can add. Totally. Go for it. Add whatever welcome box you want to add.
So in a perfect world, we would start all businesses with perfect systems that have been created ahead of time. Did your partner also hyper-focus on that one thing?
Not even a little bit.
So only you hyper-focused.
You only need the 1 or 2 people that what you're trying to change is affecting. I've worked on other teams where the CEO or the leader or the mega or whatever title you want to put there likes to stand in front of the whole organization and get everybody's buy-in about one contract to close process. It's you need to go talk to the 1, maybe 2 employees and just get their buy-in and only meet with that one employee. So I didn't meet with my business partner about any of the stuff that I was changing at all. He didn't know about it until after it was done. That I have a unique business partner relationship. Not everybody can do that.
I don't know if I would have been okay with that.
Well,
I don't know if I could have done that. I'm too much of a control freak.
I met with my partner and said, this is what I'm going to do. This is the outcome I'm going for. If I hit that outcome, are you cool with me changing a bunch of stuff? And he said, yeah. And so I just told him to stay out of it. And then I just went and met with the admin team and then just worked with them. And again, we ignored the listings, ignored the buyer process. We did not have an onboarding process at all. It was get a listing and whatever you have to do to get the paperwork signed is fine.
So if you're talking directly to an owner, would you say try to figure this out on your own or go find someone else?
Man, that is the debate of the century. As far as systems help,
yeah,
Figure out what you actually need to systemize. What is actually important? And that's hard, and every industry is different, so it's hard to answer that on a podcast. Do as much as you can on your own, because people who are good at systems are typically not cheap, and the ones who are cheap are typically going to make a bigger mess than they are going to help. Not always. You may get lucky and find the unicorn. But just people make it too complicated.
You didn't go to school for this.
No.
You just figured out systems on your own.
Yeah.
How?
It was a necessity. The last year we went from around 75 units to 179 units. So it's a lot of growth very quickly. And in real estate, you typically, if you're flipping a house, you don't see that money for 6, 8, 9 months. So, cash flow becomes an issue, and you've got all these things. So it's like, okay, I have to process 52 files in the next 30 some odd days, and I have one admin. How am I going to do that? And so that's where most of our systems come from, is not like this big fancy board meeting, and I have to get shit done, and I don't have time to get it done. So what are we going to do to make this faster? Yeah.
So did any of your previous experience from different stuff, did any of that kind of help?
Yeah, I worked on a mega team as the listing agent and did a lot to help that mega get out of production. So seeing a company that ran 500 units a year helped a lot. They run with paper files and don't use a database, which is, everybody has their own way. So that showed me I want a database and not paper files. So a lot of the technical mechanics were different, but as far as one of their big things is one point of contact at a time. So we took that and just used different tactical ways to kind of use that same idea.
So what do you mean by tactical ways? I feel like that term's way overused.
Sure, that's fair. So their thing was they had a literal paper file that all the crap went in, and whoever held on to that physical file is who talked to the client. If you didn't have the file, you didn't talk to the client. If the client reached out, you just say, hey, I'm so sorry, I don't have that information. Let me have Anna or whoever, Charlotte, whoever reach out to you, whoever has the file. That's us,
an interesting way of controlling the information.
Yeah, for sure. And so it worked for them. It drove me crazy because you can't go on vacation. You can't do it. I didn't like it. So for us, we still do that same thing. If you're in the closing department, you're only talking to the closing department, but we use a CRM, a transaction management software instead of a hard paper file. So that's all I mean by what thing are you using to control that?
Got it. So have you always been kind of systematized in how you did that? Because in reality, it feels like an efficiency system.
Yeah.
Everything, it's always about creating efficiency.
Creating efficiency and controlling quality is really all it's doing.
So what was the first connector for you that oh yeah, this is kind of what I do?
Hindsight, I didn't really realize I was good at this until really about a year ago, when I started having people be like, hey, I need help. And when I looked at my business and was like, damn, we did all that with not that many people and still had a high profit margin. I think I'm pretty good at this. Hindsight, though, even in college, I was taking 18 and 21 hour workloads and working 3 and 4 jobs and had no debt. So even then, totally different. But I was still very good at I have limited time, limited resources, and I want to get all this crap done. How am I going to do it?
Right.
So personal systems then, but I didn't recognize that at the time.
So you've always been how do I get from point A to point B the fastest?
Yeah, for sure. And enjoy the end result.
Now, okay, so now I have to ask a really fun question.
Yeah.
How does systems play out in your personal life? Because someone hearing this right now might be well, I'm going to go into her room, I'm going to go into her bathroom, and she's going to have a color coordinated toothbrush for every day of the week.
Yeah. I don't have junk drawers in my house. at all. Like none.
Nice.
Yeah. So
is
I
this the way to actually like find a really good system person? Is like, can I please go through your house and look through all the drawers?
For me, that works. And off the top of my head, everybody I know who's good at systems is, probably actually. For sure.
You heard it here first. That's a horrible hiring technique. Don't do that. Invasion of privacy.
Truly.
Can you show me your sock drawer? Okay, so like it's literally kind of like it's always been like that kind of I'm gonna call it anal attentiveness to detail, right? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it drove people crazy that have lived with me. My husband's maybe the only person who's lived with me that is kind of on that same wavelength.
So you found another one.
Yeah, I mean, he's very, very particular. We both are, and luckily it's kind of about the same thing, so it works. But I really, really care about quality, and I really value my time. I hate inefficiencies, but I'm not willing to sacrifice quality for efficiency. So that it's kind of a rub when you're building systems.
So how has that actually kind of like worked out in more of a personal aspect? And like, because I imagine the efficiency sometimes gets in the way of being able to personally connect with people.
Yeah, 100%. I struggle with that. I don't have like a solution or an answer. I mean, I have a coach who's very Hero Nation, a very holistic, whole person.
Right.
So I don't coach to numbers or metrics anymore. I don't coach to hitting a performance projection. And then I hired a therapist. That helps. But I don't know. I'm still kind of figuring that piece of it out.
Did you hear that, guys? Did you hear that one thing? A coach is not necessarily a therapist. Go get a real therapist.
Oh my God, yeah. Yes.
Sometimes I think people try to smudge those two together, and I'm like,
no.
Oh no. No, you're scaring me now. Please go away. Find a therapist. I remember telling a friend that once. They were like, we're gonna go into all this stuff, and I was like, yo.
Yeah, no.
No, I'm scared. I'm going to break you.
Yeah. There's a huge difference there.
Go talk to a licensed counselor or an actual therapist. Make sure they're licensed. Don't go find someone with a church degree.
No.
They need to actually have it, please. Okay. So how does that dynamic work out in a team? Because I imagine, right? So if your partner is super relationship oriented and then you're super like process oriented, there has to be like a place in the middle where it meets, because I'm guessing, and you and I haven't really ever talked before, but my guess comes out to be where like the employees sometimes would feel like, dude, she doesn't even like fucking care. She just cares about this stuff.
A little bit.
And then I could feel where that kind of that rub would be.
Luckily, I learned a lot of those lessons when I was working in an organization and didn't have my own. So it kind of made me a terrible employee and made my coworkers feel really the exact way that you just talked about. So I learned a lot of those lessons on somebody else's dime. I was a terrible culture fit for that organization. They were all real tight-knit, interlinked, and I just couldn't quite get there. So with my team,
So as you've changed into that, right? Do you actually care more about the people, or do you just know how to fit into the caring?
More. No, I do actually care, and I've done a better job of communicating how I'm going to show up, so that my team knows when I walk in, I'm not going to say hi to you until after lunch. And I care about you deeply, but I don't really like the mornings. I'm solving problems in the morning and typically dealing with complaints or trouble spots or issues. And so I'm just not going to say hi. I'm going to walk in to my office, and then I'll come say hi after lunch when I've eaten and unwinded and had done the whole thing. So whereas before, I wouldn't give an explanation. I would just walk in and not say hi and not be responsive and put my head down and be pissed that they didn't understand I was just getting my job done. So I do actually care about them, and I haven't compromised on kind of how I show up. I've just explained what that dynamic is better.
Did you always care, or has that been something?
I really always did care, but how would they know that?
Right.
They spent the first 4 hours of the day thinking that I hated them and was totally just at arm's length. So the last 4 hours a day, it wasn't building a relationship. It was kind of building that bridge and saying sorry and getting back to ground zero instead of making any ground forward.
I think that must have been a very interesting.
Wasn't fun.
Oh, I was even thinking as a leadership style.
Yeah.
That had to be difficult.
Yeah.
So how early on do you actually have that conversation with people? This is how I am. I'm a unique person. I love you. Mm-hmm. And this is how I work.
I think it only works for me because I legitimately care about their working style too. One of the ladies that works for me, I know that she loves flowers and she's very personal and very bubbly and very friendly. So I try to meet her in the middle. So I legitimately want to know from the people I work with, hey, what do you need from me to know that you're valued? And then I try to show up in that way. It's a learning curve the whole way. So, and then once I kind of learn that about them, that's kind of my open door to be okay, well, just so you know, I'm not a real talker in the mornings at all. So I love you. I'm so grateful you're here. If you don't see me, I'm not upset with you. I get my stuff done in the morning and I'll come say hi in the afternoon. It'll be a better experience for both of us. And they're totally cool with that. Or they tell me they are.
So you made but I'm guessing that actually took a real conscious effort on your side.
100%.
How often do you catch yourself with some of that?
Often, daily.
So what was the process that you actually set up to catch yourself?
I have a lot of people who will, my business partner will just call me out on it. He'll be like, hey, that was kind of shitty. I don't think you realize that, but that was kind of shitty that you just did that.
You came across.
Yeah. And so that, just having people are like, hey, I know you're working on this. And really that's it. There's nothing formal beyond. For a while I journaled a lot, hey, how do I think other people felt when they were around me today?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't. Oh no. Oh, that would be very painful.
Yeah, I don't do that as much anymore. But when I was first, doing all that, it was literally I just every day hey, I talked to these 5 people. Did they feel better or worse when I left?
Well, because I think I kind of think it's a very interesting process because even as leaders and entrepreneurs or business owners and that kind of thing, I think sometimes we don't realize how much of an asshole we actually are.
Yeah. And you don't mean to be.
Because we're dealing with problems most of the time. So what would be your biggest lesson that you've kind of learned in learning how to be a unique and powerful and valuable individual inside of inside your team, inside your business, but also working with people, especially if you're working with salespeople, high I's, high D's. What has been your biggest lesson that you've learned?
I wish I would have learned sooner that you have to start with the person.
Explain that.
You have to, so previous jobs, previous stuff that I've done, I felt like I had to come in and prove that I could do the thing. And that by proving that I could do the thing, the people would automatically fall in line and be like, oh, okay, Alyssa did it that way. I can do it that way. So the people in the relationship was so secondary. I didn't really care at that point. Or I cared, it just was, I thought that the way to get to the people was by doing the thing. And it took me way too long to figure out that if you start with getting to know the people, they'll help you do it. And 99% of the time, they're totally willing to do it how you want to do it or help you see a better way to do it. But you have to start with, who is this person? How do they work? And how can I help them work better? Vice versa.
So what I'm hearing you say is that just because you know a better way to do it doesn't mean that everybody's going to love your mousetrap.
At all. I mean, they're not going to care.
Right.
They're certainly not going to help you. If anything, they're going to try to debunk anything that you're trying to do.
Right, because they don't feel like you actually care about anything. You're just someone that's trying to buck the system.
It's how you make people feel matters a whole lot. And it took me I haven't figured it out, but it took me a really long time to start valuing that.
Right.
Because for me, it was I don't really care how, I care how you feel, but kind of I don't. I care that we get to the end result. And if we get to the end result, then we can, go get a drink and care that we did that thing together.
So like, where did some of that kind of concept come from, where you're like, I basically value the end result over the person, and because it almost sounds like I don't believe that people value me unless I actually have an end result.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for any like Enneagram people, it's a personality thing. I am type 3 by the book. I grew up, I performed, I was praised. Perform, praise, perform, praise. I got in trouble and grounded one year whenever I got an 89 on a progress report, not even the final report card. For me, anything below, 95 average was simply unacceptable. I was
Perfectionist to the T.
100%. And I knew it. I think my parents, I knew how to read by the time I was 4. So I think I was raised on my parents' side of it. It was just like, oh my God, she's doing so good. Let's build her up and tell her she's doing great. But what was hard for me, and as an adult, was that it wasn't like, oh, you're a nice person, good job, or
right.
Oh, you helped a stranger with the door, good job. Like, that was just expected.
Did you ever find like almost like common ground with like some of the like salespeople in that way? Because we see this, as we talked about this on this podcast before too, where I feel like a lot of salespeople are driven by like an identity system, which is basically like, I perform in order to feel validated about myself.
Yeah. What's hard though with that is that so many salespeople are either unaware. I was totally unaware for the first 22 years of my life that was even what was going on. I just thought like, oh, I can do this, so I will. I was not in therapy. The other thing is that sales is so ego driven and so
right.
Award, plaque, bonus, this tier, this tier, this tier. You know what I mean? So nobody's sitting down and having a conversation about like, hey, I really feel like a worthwhile person because I hit this tier. They're saying
you
like,
apparently haven't been talking to the Hero Nation.
But for the most part, they're just sitting there like, I'm higher than you. I beat you. I'm in the next bracket. You're not here yet.
It's dog eat dog.
So now I look at that and I'm like, wow, I really feel like we should have a conversation. But when I was in sales, no, I was that guy. I just was.
Right. So you actually were in sales too.
Yeah, 100%. And I took a lot of pride that I,
It's just not everybody else.
Yeah, I
so
did.
I'm guessing you did. If you had like really good systems, like your sales are going to go up.
And I was that guy. I totally get why I didn't have a whole lot of friends. But I didn't care because I had more money. And at that time, that's what was important to me.
How's that value system changed?
Or
has it?
I value freedom at this point. And so less than like money and things, I value what money is going to get me. So I value people more. I value the one-on-one relationships. I value 3-hour dinners where you get to know somebody.
That's a big shift.
Yeah.
So my guess is before you kind of thought it was like a waste of time.
Yeah, before it was, hey, let's go grab a happy hour cocktail as in and out as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah. But are you still probably, I'm guessing, more of a one-on-one than a group person?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. All the way.
That's the reason we're having this podcast one-on-one instead of two-on-one. It's neat. It's nice getting to know you.
Thanks.
On the podcast.
Yeah, I had fun.
Which is brought to you by Hero Nation Fuel. Guys, if you haven't become part of Hero Nation Fuel, you need to get in there. Have conversations like this. Find people that actually understand systems. Get to know them and see what kind of... You know what? Here's the thing. One of my greatest fascinations with anything else is actually finding the dynamic pieces that put together a really unique team that actually ends up covering each other's weaknesses. And it's fascinating, right? Because we each have... I'm not a huge believer in the personality systems, right? It's a nice basis. But it's really interesting because if you understand who you are and what other people bring to the table, the spectrum of color and the spectrum of quality of business that you can bring is so dynamic. Yeah. And I need assholes in my life sometimes. And being a part of something like Hero Nation, where you have really different people that have really different businesses that come with really different approaches. I haven't met too many people even if they're following, like, I follow this model from this particular, broker or business, the spectrum in there is quite fascinating.
Yeah.
And to be able to leapfrog, to be able to compress time, to be able to have conversations like this and go, you know what? Like, I really need to go make like 3 or 4 systems, and I need to declutter a couple of my other ones, is huge. So join Hero Nation Fuel. Get in there, have these conversations, get in there with a good pod leader, and do this. Go to theheronation.com. You can go ahead and sign up today. It's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you're going to love it. You don't need the guarantee, but we have it anyway. It's just to make you feel special. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. I enjoyed
really
it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.